You don't have the motivation to study. You're in your classes, you're going through the motions, but you just don't feel motivated to do it. Your classes might not excite you like these do. You're doing all the work, maybe keeping up with the assignments to some extent, but you just don't feel engaged or interested. One question I like to ask myself when I lose motivation to study is, what's my reason for doing this? Why am I studying for this class? Why should I care? Why should I put my time into studying this topic specifically? I think it's very important for everyone to find their own why for every single thing they study. Without this why, easy classes can feel a lot harder, and hard classes can feel damn near impossible. Sometimes when you're studying day in and day out, it can become difficult to remember why you're studying in the first place. It's difficult to remember that we're not quite here to just ace a class or pass a test, but remember that we're here studying for a reason, or at least we should be studying for some reason. And if we can't think of a reason, that's probably something that we should devote some time to thinking about. Because if we're just here going through the motions, then is it really a productive use of our time? I think everyone should look for a why in what they study. And it's important to be honest with yourself about what your why is. If you're studying something because you want to make a lot of money, fine, just be honest about it. Maybe you're studying psychology because you want to help a lot of people, or you're studying some kind of science because you want to make a major breakthrough, or become a common household name. Maybe you want to become world famous, and that's okay too. But I think to keep things fresh and to maintain your motivation in your studies, it's so important to figure out what your why is. Because if you don't have a why, then you're sort of just floating around, not really sure why you're doing what you're doing. And I can tell you, especially when classes get tough, it's so hard to focus and stay excited and passionate about classes when you don't really know what you're doing it all for. Now, I'm not saying this to scare you or to demotivate you, but what I'm trying to do is help you realize that when you have a why for what you're doing, especially in your studies, it makes it so much more enjoyable. Waking up with just a fire in your eyes, knowing that maybe you're going to be the best doctor in history. You're just going to be the absolute best. Maybe you're going to become a psychologist and help thousands of people overcome mental illness or other troubles. But thinking into the future and really just pondering why you're studying what you're studying, why you're doing any of this, it really just lights a fire in you. And it makes studying for difficult classes so much easier, because you're not just thinking about, oh, I have to pass this class, I really hope I do well on this test. No, you just get excited to learn. Every minute of studying, it's just one step closer to whatever your why is. And that's just so important. You need that future motivation. You need to know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, something you're working towards. It just makes, especially the difficult moments, it makes them so much more bearable, and it makes the experience as a whole so much more exciting. Now, what if you can't find your why? What if you want some reason to work or study, but you just can't figure out what it is? You know you want to work hard at something, you just don't know what. The thing is, that's perfectly okay. If you don't yet know what you want to do, that's all right. Just because you're not exactly sure what you want to do in the future doesn't mean you shouldn't work hard. But one thing that we can do is almost set artificial goals or dreams or aspirations for ourselves in place of ones that don't quite exist yet. If we're not sure what we want to do in the future yet, we can really just brainstorm and make short-term goals to still motivate us in our studies. If we don't know what we're going to be doing 10 years down the road, how do we set short goals? Let's just say we want to become more well-read, more articulate people in the short term. You don't have to know exactly what you want to do, but setting short goals for yourself, it'll make your studies so much more enjoyable. And that's what we want at the end of the day. We want you to work hard because in the end, working harder, it will never not pay off. Working hard, day in, day out, it's always going to return something. You're always going to get something out of it. We might not know what now, and we might not know what you want to do in a couple years, what your end goal is. But if we set artificial goals, if we set, small goals, just stacking up small wins day after day, it'll make the entire experience so much more exciting and so much more motivating. And motivation is what we might want. Motivation is important. We need motivation because that's what gets you through the hard classes and the late nights and the stress and the crying and everything. We need motivation. And if you don't have that intrinsically, if you don't have the motivation yet, if you don't know what you want to do yet, that's okay. But we need to set short-term goals. Figure out what you want from yourself in the short term. Now, I can use an example from my own life to illustrate my point. When I came to college, I was extremely interested in clinical psychology. I went through therapy several years ago for OCD, and after going through the entire process, I fell in love with therapy. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And coming into college, I realized it was something I wanted to do myself. I wanted to help other people through mental illness, and I just wanted to be there for others. I thought it was super interesting. And over my years of college, my interests changed, and I fell in love with other topics, the sciences, and I found that my interests were just changing a lot, to the point that I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do after college, and I'm still not super sure. So if I were to look for some kind of motivation to carry me through my studies, it wouldn't exactly be appropriate to say that I know what I'm going to do in 5, 10 years and use that as motivation, because I simply don't know. So instead, it makes more sense to just sort of give myself artificial motivation or create my own goal unrelated to exactly what might be happening a couple years down the road, as opposed to thinking, oh, I'm going to become the best therapist I can by studying these classes. Say I'm taking a counseling class next semester. Maybe I'll set a short-term goal. Maybe I'll say, I want to learn enough that whenever one of my friends is going through a tough time, I can counsel them better or better listen to what they have to say. Now, what if you're taking a class that you just absolutely hate and you're having a lot of trouble figuring out what your motivation to study hardness should be? Well, maybe it's completely unrelated to what you want to do for a living or what you want your occupation to be. So, say I'm taking a really hard class, like organic chemistry, and I'm just not a fan of it. Maybe my motivation to take this class is completely unrelated to any kind of career goal. Maybe we could set some kind of artificial goal and say, I want to get better at this class because it'll help with my reasoning skills, or it'll help with my patience, or focus, or even grit. By setting these small artificial goals that sort of link our classes to either what we want to do in the future or the kind of person we want to be, whether we want to be someone who's more focused or better at reasoning, by relating these specific classes to specific traits in ourselves that we want to develop, it makes studying for these classes a lot more motivating, and it gives us more of an incentive to see these classes as more than just a grade, but also a way to sort of develop ourselves more. Some examples of how I use different classes that were required for me to take to develop myself and sort of work on my own short-term goals were, first of all, genetics, which was a class that I absolutely hated. I took that class and I figured, you know what, I'm not enjoying it now, so what I'll do, I'll use this class to just make me better at reasoning, because that's what a lot of genetics is. It's just reasoning and really just becoming better at reading comprehension. I thought to myself, by taking this class, I'm going to make myself better at reading comprehension and just better at reasoning as a whole. When I was required to take a Spanish class, I thought that one day I might want to travel the world, and by learning another language, it makes more countries and more cultures and relationships available to me. I can learn more about other people and other cultures by taking this class that wasn't particularly interesting to me at the time. So you can see I'm making artificial motivation. It's not quite related to exactly what I want to do in the future or what I want to do for a career, but it's these little things that make the classes more meaningful. It's not just a class that I have to pass, it's not just a grade, but it's sort of a portal to get where I want to go. I want to have more adventures in the future. I want to go to more countries, and this class is one way to get me there. Now, one last example that I sort of touched on before was a counseling class that I took. It wasn't particularly interesting, but I realized that one skill that's just important for everyone is, listening skills, active listening. It's something that very few people possess. And I figured that, even if counseling is not something that I end up pursuing as a career in the future, I figured these skills are still things that I can really carry with me throughout the rest of my life. It's just super useful. So finding little ways in which maybe classes that aren't particularly interesting to you can really just relate back to your goals and your own personal development makes you a lot more motivated to study for these classes and a lot more motivated to just succeed and excel in them. By relating your classes back to these goals, we can come up with reasons for you to become excited about your studies, because that's what we want. We want you to be excited about this. There's no sense in being bored while you work. Studying does not have to be intrinsically boring. When we can come up with a reason for why you're doing it, when we can figure out what the rationale behind any of this is, why are you sinking so much time into this? When we can come up with our own reasons for this, it makes the classes infinitely more enjoyable, and it makes you excited to learn, which is good. We want you to get excited about this, because if you're going to become the best student you can and, go out into the world and make a real change, we want you locked in. We want you focused. And by creating these artificial goals, you're basically creating more of a reason for you to just get out there and just work as hard as you can on things. And that's amazing. Moral of this story is that he who can find his why will be able to withstand any how. When you know or can come up with a reason for why you're studying, the sky is the limit. You'll never need more motivation. It'll all be right there. You just have to figure it out for yourself. Remember that if you can relate your classes to your short or long-term goals, the stress and anxiety of classes will be replaced with enthusiasm and excitement. I hope you can put this information to use. I appreciate you watching, and good luck in your studies. Godspeed. I'll see you guys.